Today I'm going to be teaching you a trick for comparing decimals. When we're comparing decimals, we're asking which one is bigger. Okay, so for our first problem, we're comparing 3/10 to 3/100. 0.3, and we're comparing that to 0.03, or 3/100. Okay, and you might already know the answer to this because you might know that tenths are bigger than hundredths. But I'm going to show you a trick that you can use for any two decimals to compare them. So what I want you to first do is rewrite your two numbers on top of each other. I'm going to put 3/10 here, and I'm going to put 3/100 underneath, and I'm going to make sure that my decimals are stacked right on top of each other. So that might be the first thing that I draw is the decimal to make sure they're right on top of each other. And then I put the 0, and another 0, and 3. Okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw lines in between each place value, or in between each set of numbers. So I have kind of 3 columns. I have this column, and this column. And I'm going to go left to right, just like you would read a book. I'm going to go left to right. Okay? So in my first column, I have a 0 and I have a 0. Well, 0 is equal to 0. So this column isn't going to help me compare them. Then in my second column, I have 3 and 0. Well, 3 is greater than 0. So already I know that my top number is going to be the one that's bigger. It doesn't matter if I go to the third column, because in the third column, there's nothing here, so I could put a 0 here, because 3/10 is the same as 30/100. I could put a 0 here, and I could say, oh, well, 0 is less than 3, but that doesn't matter, because 3/10 is more than 0/10. This decimal has 0/10, so it doesn't have as many tenths as 3/10 does. So I know that this number is going to be greater regardless of what's going on in the hundredths place. Okay, so I know that this number is going to be greater, okay? And so when I'm making my comparing symbol, I'm going to make my alligator that faces that bigger number, because this is an alligator and it wants to eat the bigger number. It's hungry. It wants the bigger number. It doesn't want the smaller number. So that alligator is going to face the 3/10. Okay, let's do another one. So now I have 15/100, and I'm comparing that to 25/100. Well, we can always think about it this way. If I had, these are both in the same place value, 15/100 versus 25/100. If I have 15 apples in one basket and 25 apples in the other basket, which basket has more apples? Well, the basket with 25 apples. But let's still use our trick. I've got 15/100. I'm going to make sure that my decimal stacks right on top. And I've got 25/100. Now I'm going to draw my lines in between. And I'm going to go one by one. In my first column, 0 and 0, they're the same, so that's not going to help me. Then I'm going to my second column, the tenths place, not column really, it's place value. In my tenths place, I've got a 1 here and a 2 here. Well, which one's greater? 2. So I know that this bottom number is going to be bigger. Doesn't matter that in the third column, 5 and 5 are the same. What matters is that going left to right, the second column, this bottom number is bigger. Okay, so I know that 25/100 is going to be bigger. The basket with 25 apples would have more. So this time my alligator, instead of facing to the left, it's going to face to the right, because the alligator wants to eat the bigger number, 25/100. All right, now I've got 32 and 479 thousandths and 32 and 482 thousandths. These are two bigger numbers. There are more digits in each of these numbers than there were in our previous two problems, but the same trick is going to make it easy. So I've got 32 and 479 thousandths and 32 and 482 thousandths. Okay? I'm going to put my lines in between each place value, and I'm going to go left to right. In my first column, 3 and 3, those are the same. We've got 3 tens in each. In our second column, there are 2 ones in each. They're the same. That's not going to help us. In our third column, we have 4 tenths in each. See, 4 tenths, 4 tenths. So we have 4 tenths in each, so that's not going to help us. And then in our fourth column, we find 2 numbers that are different, 7 and 9. Well, we've got 7 hundredths in the first number and 8 hundredths in the second number. So our second number is going to be bigger. So I'm going to make my alligator facing that second number, eating the bigger number, okay? Because the 3's were the same, 2's were the same, 4's were the same, and then we compared that 7 to that 8. Okay, and then very last, we've got 13 and 103 thousandths and 13 and 13 thousandths. One and 1, those are the same. 3 and 3, those are the same. 1 and 0, I see that that top number is bigger. We've got 1 tenth in this number. We don't have any tenths in this number. So I know that that top number is going to be bigger. And which way will my alligator face? All right, well, hopefully you said it is going to face to the left because that number is bigger. You also might find sometimes that you have equivalent decimals. That means that they represent the same amount. And we would use the equal sign to show that 2 decimals are equivalent. Okay? So for our first one, we've got 2 tenths, and we're comparing that to 20 hundredths. Well, you might already know that there are 10 hundredths in each tenth. So if we have 2 tenths, that would be 20 hundredths. So you might already know that these are equivalent, but we can still use our trick. I can write 2 tenths here. I can write 20 hundredths here, and I can go by place value 0, 0, 0 ones and 0 ones, 2 tenths and 2 tenths. Well, there's nothing here, and then I have a 0 down here in the hundredths place. So how do you know which one is bigger? Well, you might already know that you can add a 0 at the end of any decimal, and it would mean the same amount. It's just like if I were telling you that I had 3 bags of jelly beans, that would be the same thing as saying I have 3 and 0 tenths bags of jelly beans, or I have 3 and 0 hundredths bags of jelly beans. Doesn't matter how many zeros I put at the end, I still only have, sorry, that wasn't writing well, 3 bags of jelly beans. So I can add a 0 here, and I know that these 2 are the same, and that means that these 2 decimals are equal. Same thing with this one. I've got 2 and 150 thousandths, and I have 2 and 15 hundredths. I can go by place value. I have 2 ones and 2 ones. That's the same. I've got 1 tenth and 1 tenth. That's the same. I've got 5 hundredths and 5 hundredths. That's the same. And I have 0 thousandths and nothing written here. Well, I know that that means that I could just put a 0 here and they would be the same, meaning that both of those decimals are equal.